Well, good morning, and you know what? Welcome to Rising. That's our show. We've got another great one for you today. I am joined by Niall Stanage. Nice to see you, Niall.
Always a pleasure, Robby. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, although it feels like we're kind of just getting the week going. That's
Absolutely.
what a holiday Monday always does to us.
Shortened week after Labor Day, but plenty to pack in for sure.
Plenty to discuss today, yes indeed.
Definitely. So coming up on Rising, I'll be discussing in a Niall's Notes segment how two courts ruled against President Trump on Tuesday and how that was a big win for the rule of law.
Plus, Trump says that the U.S. drone striked a boat allegedly carrying drugs and controlled by a Venezuelan cartel.
And the House Oversight Committee released over 33,000 pages of Epstein documents. But is there anything new in them? Lot to discuss there, but first, Robby, what is on your radar today?
Well, here's some not-so-breaking news. President Trump is perfectly fine, quite alive, and very much not dead. Confirmation comes straight from the president himself, who was surprised and slightly bemused by a question at a press conference yesterday, which came following somewhat widespread speculation on social media that perhaps there was something wrong with the president's health. Now, bored, gossip-minded social media sleuths often scrutinize pictures and videos of famous people or the lack thereof for evidence that the celebrity in question is unwell or possibly already dead and replaced, like Paul McCartney or Avril Lavigne, according to false internet rumors. Maybe false internet rumors, who knows? Recently, Trump has been the object of some of this speculation to the extent that the hashtag #TrumpDead was trending on social media. Now, obviously, no serious person really thought Trump was dead, though his appearance, his cadence, and vigor has all been scrutinized lately. Look, he is, after all, there's no way around it, the oldest person to ever assume the presidency. Trump's hand, in particular, has been of interest not just to random social media people, but also mainstream and progressive media outlets like the Daily Beast and New York Magazine. His hand, to be fair, has appeared bruised in a manner that suggests to me IV treatments, but before any media folks start worrying about Trump too much, we know they are worried because, oh, they love him so. Let's consider this reality check. Straight from the horse's mouth, Donald Trump himself, who was asked whether he was dead by Fox News' Peter Doocy.
Viral social media trend over the weekend. How did you find out over the weekend that you were dead? You see that?
No.
People didn't see it for a couple days. 1.3 million user engagements as of Saturday morning about your demise.
Really? I
didn't see that?
You know, I have heard, it's sort of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said there must be something wrong with him.
Trump then got to the heart of the matter, the real double standard at play, and you probably see it coming.
Biden wouldn't do him for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him, and we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. No, I heard that. I get reports. Now, you knew I did an interview that lasted for about an hour and a half with somebody, and everybody saw that was on one of your competitors. I did numerous shows and also did a number of truths.
Ah, yes, the poignant truths is what he said after that. So poignant, so truthful. Now, while I may not agree with everything President Trump wrote on Truth Social over the weekend, I do agree with his overall point. The mainstream media's interest in Trump's health seems more than a little disingenuous when it's coming from people who failed to properly vet former President Biden's health. And I don't mean to keep harping on this subject. Maybe you're getting sick of it, because at this point, we have exhaustively litigated the fact that Biden had declined precipitously during the last 2 years of his presidency, but was shielded from the press and his own cabinet by a very small number of advisors, and with a few rare exceptions, basically no one spoke up about it. The media certainly failed to do their job and demand access to the president, or point out that if they weren't getting access, well, maybe the public should start drawing conclusions about what that means. Now, perhaps the media will say, hey, now, we realize we screwed up. We want to do a better job this time around, and so we are being overly sensitive about any possible information that might point toward Trump's decline. But the American public might find that a little hard to believe. In any case, if Trump's health does decline, or his advanced age does catch up with him, well, you'll probably be the first to know, and you won't need the mainstream media to tell you. That's because Trump is uniquely accessible, not just compared with Biden, but compared with any other president in U.S. history. He sits for lengthy podcasts. He takes questions from the press. He converses with his cabinet with great regularity. If he does alter that schedule or disappear from the public eye, well, I hope the mainstream media does ask questions about that. But the evidence will be self-apparent. As Elon Musk likes to say about the community on X, which is really a stand-in for the online American public, you are the media now. Trump's health. We're scrutinizing it. I'm already annoyed by how this is going to play out over the next couple of years, Niall, because it's going to be any sign of decline, both physical or mental, is going to prompt, I bet, wall-to-wall coverage. And should we invoke the 25th Amendment? 25th, I always forget which one it is.
Yeah.
25th Amendment. By people who said nothing about Biden for months.
So here is where I think I differ a bit from the analysis you just gave. The speculation about Trump's health.
The hilarious analysis.
Hilarious and witty and erudite analysis that you gave.
Thank you. Now you may proceed.
Is that it was not the mainstream media that was driving that speculation at all. In fact, the mainstream media only really were, in a sense, granted permission to pick it up when Ducey asked that question or when Trump appeared. The speculation that, Trump is dead or he's had a stroke or there's something catastrophic wrong with him was driven almost exclusively on social media and to some extent on sort of very left-wing independent media, but primarily social media. So to me, it doesn't point to the failings of mainstream media. It actually points to the way the old function of traditional media as gatekeepers has disappeared pretty much, has been vaporized. And that, in fact, has at times left those gates open for this kind of speculation that is just as kind of absurd in Trump's case as it is in Paul McCartney's or Avril Lavigne's or whoever.
That's an interesting point. I guess some of this social media commentary I saw was from, but it was not in a traditional media format. It was from who I would classify as mainstream media people, or even people who are writers or commentators for places like the Daily Beast or wherever, not to specifically call them out. And maybe and then the coverage I was pointing to, which is legitimate to some degree. I'm not saying please don't cover Trump's health or don't, call attention if he appears to have bruises. That's totally legitimate to write about or even ask him about at a press conference. And you're right that the media's ability to just ignore those kinds of questions is over forever, which was really the point I was getting at, is that because Trump is so accessible, it'll be pretty obvious when something goes, if something goes awry with him, because he is, known for doing these fairly energetic hour-long conversations and interviews and press conferences. I hear he doesn't sleep well. Have you heard that set of things?
I have heard that, but I do remember that doctor during his first term, or his first campaign, who said he was the fittest president who's ever lived in the history of the Republic. So
look, he is an old man. He looks a little bit old. He does look a little bit older to me now than he did during the first term.
Well, and sorry to cut across you, but I mean, it has been acknowledged that he does suffer from, I believe the correct term is chronic venous insufficiency. It's when the veins in your legs cease to work as well as they once did, and that's what's leading to swelling around the ankles. It's sort of related to, but slightly different to, varicose veins. Whatever the bruising is on his hand that he sometimes tends to try to cover up, that's a little more mysterious.
I think they're giving him some kind of injection.
I assume so.
Yeah, well, I think it is. So, look, we should keep talking about it. Shouldn't be ignored. I just, I think I can predict an overcorrection that is going to occur for how much his health and fitness is discussed in the next couple of years. Although really there were conversations about that even the first time around, that his zaniness was kind of used as a stand-in for his general cognitive health. Which
right. Well,
really if you don't like it in the first place, that's fine, but it hasn't really changed.
Yeah. Well, also whether his sort of lack of linear speaking has become less linear over time. Has the weave become more weavy? I think that's a valid question for sure.
The speculation about what many people saying this and that,
right.
Saying it was a very good press conference, that kind of thing. All right, next up, an escalation on the war on drugs. Trump ordered a deadly strike on a vessel believed to be manned by cartel members on open waters. We have the footage of the attack. That's coming up right after the break. President Trump announcing a deadly strike against the Tren de Aragua gang in the first publicly known operation against the cartel since deploying warships to the Caribbean. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said that 11 terrorists were killed on international waters. The boat was carrying drugs in the Caribbean. No U.S. personnel was injured during this operation.
Trump also releasing this video showing the boat allegedly carrying the gang members. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had this to say to reporters on the attack.
Suffice it to say that the president is going to be on offense against drug cartels and drug trafficking in the United States. It destabilizes not just the country, but the entire Caribbean basin. These particular drugs were probably headed to Trinidad or some other country in the Caribbean, at which point they just contribute to the instability these countries are facing. So the president's been very clear that he's going to use the full power of America and the full might of the United States to take on and eradicate these drug cartels, no matter where they're operating from and no matter how long they've been able to act with impunity. Those days are over.
The White House did not say how the Navy was able to determine that the people on board were Tren de Aragua members or how much drugs was on the boat. It's also unknown why deadly force was used in this operation instead of stopping the vessel and apprehending those on board.
Well, I have a lot of questions here. Probably some of them are questions you yourself have. First, look, there's a legitimacy, obviously, toward apprehending people operating in the illegal drug business. This was in open waters, so it's not violating the sovereignty of some other country. We didn't go into Mexico and fight them. That's all fine. Now, killing rather than apprehending is a choice that, again, raises a question mark for me. Maybe not necessarily off the table, but certainly we can't provide a subsequent due process to people we've just killed. Usually you don't do that unless it's necessary or they're firing back, particularly with this level of foreknowledge. It's not like it was caught in some sudden exchange of gunfire where they had no choice. Further, all the drugs weren't headed here.
No.
The drugs were headed somewhere else.
Apparently.
So then,
what are we doing?
What's the deal here?
Right. No,
I don't know. I don't want to ask. This seems like war on terror type stuff.
Yeah.
The war on drugs has not gone any better than the war on terror.
Right.
I would say, in part because, and in fact, this is the kind of black market effect at work. The more you do this kind of thing, unless we can kill all the drug dealers, which we've been trying to do for 40 years and have not succeeded at, you just make the surviving drug dealers and the product they have more valuable, and thus they continue doing what they're doing. 40 years of this has not produced the desired outcome.
Yeah.
It's not for lack of trying or lack of killing or lack of arresting, which makes me actually think a different strategy might be employed. But furthermore, they weren't even headed here, so I don't know, man.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Well, I broadly agree with pretty much all of that. The war on drugs I'm incredibly skeptical of. I think it has been largely counterproductive. Certainly hasn't succeeded in any measure at all. I mean, the reason that there is a drugs problem is A, there's a demand for drugs, and B, the illegality of those drugs creates a certain premium, not to put too fine a point on it, for how people get them. And it also creates the situation where, relatively less harmful drugs are often sold by the same people who are selling much more harmful drugs. So there is a gateway argument there. But look, in this case, the US has attacked a vessel, apparently killing everyone on board. And it's a kind of trust me bro justification, right? It's the idea that, these guys were Tren de Aragua, they were smuggling drugs, they are therefore terrible people, and we are therefore justified in preemptorily killing them.
Right.
That
and even if all that's true, I'm not sure it's something we should do.
I agree.
Because Marco Rubio is saying the harm that we're trying to prevent is that their actions are contributing to instability in Trinidad or somewhere like that. Well, is that
our responsibility?
Is that our business? Well, now this is talking about national security. At that point, if that's really the case you're making, then I'm going to go back to a well that I know the Trump administration doesn't love, or no administration loves, frankly, which is, Congress needs to declare war on Tren de Aragua or add them to some kind of, this gets into terrorist authorization.
Right.
I think our wars against terror in the Middle East need renewed authorization, frankly. When the Congress voted on it, 25 years ago, that it's not, they didn't even have these specific groups in mind. ISIS didn't even exist yet.
Right.
Which that's a legitimate thing to do, but we got to do it properly, and it's got to be approved by Congress so that we can hold accountable the people who vote for it. For the State Department to just say, we're killing people of this nature. Again, I would want more of a justification. It wasn't even headed here. And this kind of thing, this strategy has been tried. The tough guy will just kill all the drug dealers strategy. I'm sorry, that's like a simpleton approach to this problem at this point. We've been doing this for years and years and years. It's not lack of killing. It's not lack of, it's the problem that people want drugs, and you can't kill a human impulse to engage in behavior that's not good for you. We should try to get help to people who are addicted to illegal drugs. Now, I understand that some of these synthetic opiates and things of the fentanyl is a different kind of problem than some of the drug issues been dealt with in the past. It's more akin to a poisoning, really, than drug overdose, because in a lot of cases people aren't taking fentanyl on purpose. They're taking something else, just like they're taking a defective product on the market. That would speak toward having a more, again, making it less illegal, so that you could then have some kind of FDA-style regulation of it would actually help, I would argue, in many of these cases. And people who are against the drug war have been making these arguments, again, for decades. So there's nothing new here.
No, there isn't. In relation to Tren de Aragua, Trump, of course, does contend that it's a terrorist group and that therefore certain actions are justified. But this gets to another point where I think we perhaps have common ground, which is the increase in tensions with Venezuela itself. The US now has various Navy ships just outside Venezuelan waters. Nicolas Maduro is unhappy about that. This is not to defend Maduro, but he believes that the US is trying to topple him or steal Venezuela's wealth in terms of oil and gas. There is a danger there of an escalatory cycle, and this kind of thing, I think, plays into that in a way that doesn't really do anybody any good and is part of this war on drugs, which has always proven futile in the past. Yeah,
that one's complicated because I think the fall of Nicolas Maduro would be a good thing for the people of Venezuela. I don't want the U.S. to be involved in that or bring about that outcome if the people rise up and choose freedom and democracy. That would be good. I don't want to seize their oil. I want to do deals with them. I think the U.S. should purchase oil from Venezuela. I think that would be a great antidote to our problems in the Middle East, is to do business with someone closer to home. This regime is difficult. And if the Maduro regime moves toward more friendly relations with the U.S. and doesn't have to be toppled, that'd be great too. We should, do diplomacy with them. But Maduro is a pretty reprehensible figure. But we shouldn't just go around, wiping people off the face of the earth because we don't like them.
I think we can agree on that point, at least.
All right, some agreement there. That's good. Next up, Stephen A. Smith says he's not ruling out a 2028 presidential run and is launching a new show. We'll be right back after this. Popular sportscaster Stephen A. Smith says a 2028 presidential run isn't out of the question.
Smith did an interview with the Washington Post where he discussed his new politics-focused radio show and 2028 and his friendship with Sean Hannity. In regards to a potential run, Smith told the Post he has no desire or intentions to be a politician. He is leaving the door open, however, saying, quote, A, because friends and loved ones of mine have asked me to do so, and B, because if these candidates appear to be as atrocious as they've been, and we don't see a light at the end of the tunnel to go up against what the other side is throwing in our direction, then will I entertain it? Yeah, I'll entertain it. Sad I can't do a Stephen A. Smith impersonation, but it doesn't really work with my accent. Smith said that if someone were able to convince him to do it, he thinks he might still say no. The reason he's leaving the door open, he says, is because he promised people he, quote, cares about very deeply that he would, and that one never knows what God has in store.
Smith also discussed his upcoming politics show, which premieres September 17th on SiriusXM. He told the Washington Post, I'm excited about it. It's something that I want to do and something I'm passionate about doing. I'm certainly not an aficionado by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm a conscientious observer. I care. I'm American. Smith then took a jab at former VP Kamala Harris, saying, unlike her, the 2028 Democrat nominee will have to do new media runs. Yes, indeed.
Do you think Stephen A. Smith is the answer to what ails our nation, Robby?
I think he's right to not rule out a presidential bid. By the way, I am also not ruling it out.
You're leaving the door open.
So you should
Soave 2028.
Extra attention to Rising and any other media property I'm involved in.
Exactly.
Because,
watch everything they're doing, because you never know when you're going to declare.
So that's a smart strategy to not explicitly rule it out and let the rumor swirl. I don't know whether he will run or not.
It's an option that isn't open to me, I'm sad to say, unless they change the Constitution.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Too.
No.
Change the Constitution to let
foreign-born people become president.
That's going to happen.
So we think this is a publicity gambit by Stephen A., don't we?
Yes, I do. Which is fine. He's welcome to have some publicity. I find him interesting, and he's well liked, and what he has going for him is, he comes from the realm of sports and entertainment, and I think we've all realized that those are the skills you hone to be good at the craft of commentary on entertainment and sports are very applicable to not necessarily running the government, but for running for office, as Donald Trump has shown. And we kind of thought that Trump might be the first in a wave of kind of celebrity entertainer candidates.
Hasn't really happened.
Has not happened yet at all. Mark Cuban has talked about running. That would be another person kind of in that mold. From the same show, Kevin O'Leary had talked about doing it in Canada. Someone of that, we always hear about Oprah, other people like that. It very well could be done, but we actually haven't seen it yet.
No, we hadn't. I mean, I remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger was first elected governor of California, and that was going to kick off this great wave of things. There was speculation about some of the people you mentioned, and that didn't until it was Trump, obviously. And like you say,
Jesse Ventura. It used to be. It was a thing when a celebrity, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
But it hasn't really increased over time. Even
No.
though it seems obvious, there are definite advantages to being very well known already and having an existing fan base to translate into political support.
Right, and often the idea is that a celebrity will somehow be able to transcend the partisan divide. I've always been skeptical about it, but it's an argument you hear. Like sometimes The Rock is mentioned, for example, as a potential candidate, and there's this idea that someone like him would sort of vault above the divide. I don't think that's really possible. I think the reason there is a divide is because people have different strongly held political views. But our director is in my ear telling me that I will be part of his cabinet. So at least that
nice.
I can still be part of the great government of this great nation.
I just think that already having existing name recognition is such an underrated advantage in our current political system for distinguishing yourself in a crowded field, because our fields are increasingly very crowded, because even obscure people have a lot of incentive to run for president, because what's the worst thing that can happen? You become a talking head or whatever, or you get look at what Pete Buttigieg did.
Yeah.
Very obscure, totally unknown person who catapulted himself to not just much wider fame, but an actual position in the administration. So there's no reason not to go for it, which means the person who's already best known is going to have a huge advantage.
Absolutely.
Whereas if it's like 4 governors who all kind of we don't know, and we listen and we find out, that's done. That doesn't happen anymore. It's going to be 20 governors plus maybe 1 well-known person.
All competing to put their name forward even more. Up next, a judge ruled that President Trump deploying to Los Angeles was illegal. I'll be discussing that more in my notes. Stay with us.
All right, Niall, what's in your notes today?
Well, today a note of optimism, Robbie. Tuesday was a good day for the rule of law in America. We badly need more of those. 2 courts ruled against President Trump in his ravenous quest to expand his own power. First, a district court in California declared Trump's deployment of the National Guard and the US Marines in Los Angeles to be illegal. Then, late last night, the usually conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Trump could not continue using the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans. In that second case, Trump had argued that the presence of gang members amounted to an actual invasion of the United States. And the court said, nope. Quote, we find no invasion or predatory incursion. Both rulings, of course, might end up before the Supreme Court, and Trump has a friendly audience there, not least because he nominated 3 of the 9 justices. But whatever way the Supreme Court rules, it won't erase the factual record that the lower courts have established. That record is one in which Trump has ridden roughshod over history and precedent and the law as he grasps for more power. The situation in Los Angeles is particularly alarming, and that's partly because of what happened, which I'll get to in a moment, but it's also because Trump is seeking to replicate the pattern elsewhere. He has already, of course, deployed the National Guard here in DC, where we don't have the protections of full statehood. and he beats the drum louder every day for doing the same in other places like Chicago and Baltimore. Here he is at the White House yesterday. Now, the reporter's question is a little hard to hear, but he's asking Trump whether he has made his mind up on deploying federal forces to Chicago. Take a look.
We're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation.
Isn't a political thing. Pretty much everything Donald Trump does is very much a political thing. So, back to Los Angeles. The judge in that case, Charles Breyer, was crystal clear. Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard and the US Marines violated the prohibition on the use of the military to enforce domestic law, according to the judge. That prohibition has stood for more than 2 centuries via the Posse Comitatus Act. Yes, there can be some exceptions to that in rare circumstances, but Breyer found that the scale of the protests over immigration raids earlier this year did not come close to meeting that standard. The judge noted that Trump had deployed troops, quote, ostensibly to quell a rebellion. The judge then added, quote, there were indeed protests in Los Angeles and some individuals engaged in violence. Yet there was no rebellion, nor was civilian law enforcement unable to respond to the protests and enforce the law. Trump and his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth deployed 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines anyways. Once again, we need to step back to appreciate how shocking Trump's conduct can be. A President of the United States deployed almost 5,000 troops to the nation's second largest city, for no good reason at all. Liberals are outraged. But why isn't everyone? Conservatives, ostensibly so concerned with the rights of the individual and the threat of an overreaching state, are largely silent. Why is that? The dangers here are right before our eyes. Trump is engaged in a rapid lowering of the bar for using the military among and against the civilian population. And once that bar is lowered, who knows what happens next? A reminder one more time. This is a president who sought to overturn an election, raised a mob to help him in that effort, and pardoned even the most violent members of that mob the very first day he got back into power. The problem here isn't that people are too alarmist about Trump. The problem is that they're not alarmed enough. One notable exception in the political world is California Governor Gavin Newsom. Here he is speaking to Brian Tyler Cohen last month.
He's the big guy trying to find peace, really? When he's bringing war to the American people? He put military in the streets, not of Baghdad. He didn't send the military in his first administration anywhere in the world. He sent the United States Marines into the United States of America in one of the bluest cities in this country, in Los Angeles, one of the great cities, American cities. That's what Donald Trump did. He is a wartime president.
Tuesday's ruling was a win for Newsom, but there are bigger things at stake than that. In the California decision, the judge looked all the way back to 1878 and a speech by a Maryland congressman called William Kimmel, no relation to Jimmy, as far as we know. Kimmel was actually introducing the Posse Comitatus Act, arguing for why it was necessary. Partly, he said, because deploying the military anywhere to enforce domestic law could soon enough lead to their deployment everywhere, which would of course be martial law. Quote, if this may be done in one district, may it not be done in all the districts? If so, and the interest of a president demands, may he not use this power for his own purposes, Kimmel pondered. The congressman went on to warn about the dangers of a president sparking trouble as a pretext for the use of military power. Such a would-be despot, Kimmel noted, could, quote, provoke the resistance he seeks for the employment of force and in the name of order substitute his will for law. To, in the name of order, substitute his will for law. That's as good and succinct a summary as you'll get of what Donald Trump is doing. He's been doing it almost every day of his second term. He's doing it all across the board. Many institutions in politics, academia, and media have crumbled and caved in the face of his assault. We should be grateful that the courts have not so far.
When I saw the, excuse me, subject of your radar today, I actually thought it'd be a decision that I'm even more excited about, which is the hold on the tariffs.
Well,
more emergency authority that the president does not have, the court found, and I'm happy about that. Look, I am temperamentally broadly in agreement with you. I don't want to vest awesome police federal powers in not specifically this president, but any president. And I think these things could easily be abused. And we have seen the great irony of, for instance, the Homeland Security. What they're doing now is that Kristi Noem, as governor of her state, resisted federal COVID mandates and is now the enforcer of the federal police force effectively. Again, it goes to show how you have to imagine these powers in the hands of your your enemy political party. Right now, conservatives are acting like they can't ever imagine a time where Democrats are in control again, and this is a very closely split Congress. I know Trump did win, but it's kind of close. Who knows if the next guy is going to win? And I would like us to be working to constrain the government wherever possible, so that nothing like COVID ever happens again, nothing like the war on terror ever happens again, nothing like the war in Iraq ever happens again, and instead I see expansions of executive authority anywhere. And also they could just do these things, they wouldn't run into the court problems if they could just pass laws.
Right.
They could update the laws you're talking about as long as they could get the votes for them. Or if Democrats are going to obstruct them and they think it's good, make the Democrats obstruct them. And then they say to the American people, look, Democrats get in our way when we do things the right way, so you got to vote for more of us. I don't know why they're not taking that road, just because Congress is lazy, and Trump thinks he could do things more quickly, but he's going to run into court problems when he does it.
Well, I do think, in fairness to you, you have been pretty clear on the problems that you have with this kind of thing. I think it is a great shame that conservatives more generally, I know you define yourself as libertarian, but conservatives more generally aren't alarmed by this massive overreach and the accumulation or concentration of power in this particular president. It seems plainly dangerous, whether one is conservative or liberal to me. And
that's what stops me from identifying myself as one of them, is exactly what you point out there. I think it was Hayek, F.A. Hayek, an economist and philosopher I'm a fan of, who wrote an essay, decades and decades and decades ago saying this is why I don't classify myself as a conservative, for exactly this reason, because they get into power and then out goes the kind of principled fear of large government or authoritarianism when they're in charge. Many such cases, as
many
familiar political figure would say.
Sure.
Next up, Congress is back, and a familiar issue is at the top of their agenda: Jeffrey Epstein, the heated demand to release all the files. After the break, stay with us. Well, Congress is back in session, and it seems the top issue hasn't changed much in their absence. There's still a major push for Jeffrey Epstein documents transparency. The House Oversight Committee now releasing 33,000 pages of documents regarding Epstein. Several of these documents were public record and actually nothing new.
California Congressman Robert Garcia saying 97% of these documents have previously been released, and releasing this statement. The 33,000 pages of Epstein documents James Comer has decided to release were already mostly public information to the American people. Don't let this fool you.
The demand for the document transparency is bipartisan. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie and Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna are both attempting to force a House vote that would force the DOJ to release all the documents, but both of these congressmen will be holding a press conference today with 10 Epstein alleged victims.
Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to stop a discharge petition effort by Democrats and some Republicans, since he says it doesn't adequately protect the victims' personal information. Here's what Congressman Massie told reporters on Speaker Johnson's efforts.
It's an effort to keep the files from being released. And the question is, why is the Speaker of the House engaged in that? I mean, he's allegedly a social conservative from a movement Republican, and it seems to be very out of character for him to cover up for sex trafficking.
Speaker Johnson is Speaker as long as Donald Trump wants him to be Speaker, and that's actually his motivation for keeping this stuff covered up, is the president wants it covered up.
And during Tuesday's hearing, there was a tense exchange between Congressman Jim McGovern and House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer.
Mr. Comer, I mean, do you support the Massie counter resolution, yes or no?
We're already doing it. And the discharge petition does not have the force of law. We've already subpoenaed.
You can
look, Mr. McGovern, it's very disappointing that you're trying to politicize this. We're trying to get answers. We're trying to do everything that's in this discharge petition, but you're trying to politicize it.
Speaker Johnson also saying they want to uncover the truth, but make sure it never happens again. More Epstein.
Not going anywhere, Robbie, despite your desire that we all move on from a massive case of sexual abuse and predatory behavior.
Moving on a little bit, the new files were very much
old
as
files.
expected to be same information over again. Even the 3% that isn't the same information is actually the same information, just presented in a slightly different way. It's incomprehensible. It's like the way the doc, you have to click through and you can't read how, it's not gonna, no eyes are gonna be opening from even trying to grapple with these documents, so this is nothing. But again, goes to say that I'm sure the average person, maybe now the MAGA influencers have finally gotten it through their head that actually there already exists thousands and thousands and thousands of pages that have been released about Epstein, and it just doesn't contain the kind of information they want, which is evidence that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and Bill Gates and the royal family of Britain and George Soros had like a sexual tryst together or something with underage girls.
Well,
sorry, that's what they're looking for.
I mean, that is what they're looking for.
And Democrats are looking for the evidence that Donald Trump and Republicans did that, and that doesn't exist either. So.
Well, right. I mean, the point is, though, that this is a pickle that the Trump administration has got itself into by its own volition.
For sure.
One of the main catalysts being the now infamous Pam Bondi, the client list is on my desk waiting review statement. Then we were told that no client list exists. Even before that, you had people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, before ascending to their current lofty positions, suggesting that there was something very nefarious hidden. Now, while I don't like I'm sort of generally anti-conspiracy theory, I'm never sure that that's an appropriate label to put on the Epstein stuff generally, because this is, or was, an extremely wealthy guy, an extremely well-connected guy who is documented to have had all these dealings with very influential people of all political persuasions and none. And it seems at the very least plausible that he would use, and perhaps did use, some of those connections to get more, to avoid justice, essentially. Or certainly in that previous deal that he did, to get a very lenient deal for himself. So I totally get the impulse to have more of this documentation released. The discharge petition, which is a fancy way of saying a petition that basically you just get a majority of the House to sign on to, and you can avoid certain more onerous mechanics. That seems a perfectly good thing to me to get. Of course, we want to protect the privacy of victims, but there is, I think, more to come out here, and whether it's damning or not, I think it is a very valid thing to seek its release.
Yeah, I am for any transparency measure that Massie and Khanna put forward. I support it always. More transparency is good to address the questions you've just raised, so I have no problem with that. What has shifted my thinking on this subject a little bit in the last couple of weeks is it's not actually Trump saying we should move on for this. I don't need to listen to Trump. I disagree with him all the time. I hope our viewers
recognize that by now
enough that I don't take marching orders from Trump. But it's the greater scrutiny from some independent journalists like Michael Tracy, for instance, who I generally find reporting to be very solid, of the alleged victims, and some of their stories not standing up to the scrutiny he was giving them. He also walked through why the initial legal action against Epstein was more, in his view, appropriate than I thought it was. Because I, for a long time, had claimed that why this guy was allowed to come and go from the jail, and that looks very suspect to me and reflects maybe the influence he might have had. It's too complicated to go into now, but there are various reasons why, on paper, the legal case was not as solid as you might have thought it was based on everything we know now, and that might have been a perfectly the later finding that it was handled inadequately. There was a judge that found that it was handled inadequately, but then that finding was overturned by a subsequent judge. So it ends up a little bit more murky. And then again, the scrutiny of Virginia Giuffre, who accused Alan Dershowitz, and we grilled him on Rising once years ago about those accusations, and then afterwards she recanted that. So I have to take that seriously, and this is characteristic of some of the other accusers as well. In terms of the payouts they got. Look, you have people. I'm someone who came to public attention for being for scrutinizing Me Too claims and not automatically believing every wild, awful story I heard, and I think there was a little bit of that at play. Now, he did have a lot of shady connections. He had wealth from sources we don't understand. There was the insinuation of intelligence connections, particularly to Israel. The connection between Ghislaine Maxwell's father and Israel is well established, is not conspiracy theory. So all of that makes this still interesting and worth pursuing. And again, I still support any disclosures that will come out on the subject. I'm willing to believe that things have been covered up, but I'm more discerning of the claims that some alleged victims have made, is what I'm saying.
So I haven't read Michael Tracy's work on all of this, so I'm not able to debate the minutiae of that. But I mean, I do think it's worth re-emphasizing, and I don't think you're denying that Epstein was involved in predatory behavior on a massive scale and used his wealth both to facilitate that behavior and to protect himself from the consequences
Certainly.
of it.
He was convicted on this basis, and
Right.
so was Ghislaine Maxwell, and it is, I'm not saying that did not happen. No.
Sure. So therefore, given that it did happen, I think there is validity to trying to uncover more about exactly what those connections were and how they were utilized or not.
But look at someone like Sean P. Diddy Combs facing completely valid, justified accusations of abuse that are on camera. But then, hundreds of other people come forward and say, oh, yeah, it happened to me too. Where's my payday? This is just something that happens in cases like this. Doesn't mean there wasn't a legitimate basis in the first place, but it means, we can't just believe everything everyone says about their interactions.
No, but we give them the chance to be heard nonetheless. Anyway.
The Washington Free Beacon is reporting next up that Ilhan Omar's net worth has reached up to $30 million after she denied being a millionaire. We'll discuss. Don't go anywhere. Has Representative Ilhan Omar's net worth skyrocketed? A new report based on her latest financial filing shows her husband's company's value soared up to $30 million in 1 year. The Washington Free Beacon first reported that. This follows Omar's denial that she's a millionaire. She claimed that she's been the subject of right-wing disinformation campaigns about her financial status.
According to Omar's 2025 Congressional Financial Disclosure Report, which of course covers 2024, the Minnesota Congresswoman and her husband's assets clocked in at up to 3,500% higher than in 2023. The details in the filing show the vast jump came from her husband, Tim Mynette's two companies. Those are a winery in California and a venture capital firm. Combined, the Free Beacon reports that the companies had been worth only about $51,000 at the end of 2023. It should be noted that while the company's values increased, the disclosures do not show the couple taking any income from the venture capital firm, and reported between $5,000 and $15,000 in income from the winery.
But the skyrocketing value is under scrutiny. The Spectator contributor David Seifer Jr. wrote, quote, Omar's financial disclosure is more than a tabloid headline. It's a cultural moment. Here is one of the loudest critics of capitalism, now sitting on the kind of wealth that capitalism makes possible.
Rising has reached out to Congresswoman Omar's office. Meanwhile, on Blue Sky, various users were downplaying the report and said there was nothing suspicious about the situation, and Omar was doing nothing more than listing her husband's growing wealth.
Right, it is her husband's wealth. Although,
is.
for instance, in the case of Nancy Pelosi, who is the subject of these kind of stock insider trading, disclosure preventions, it's her husband's wealth. He's doing the stock trading, and the fact that they're connected, I mean, they kind of share their wealth in a broader sense. Now, I don't actually care, to be perfectly frank. Ilhan Omar, just like anyone else, she doesn't have to sit in poverty just because she's a member of Congress, as long as she's following whatever the rules are. And now it sounds like she was kind of denying that she's this wealthy, even though she is. So she shouldn't lie about it if that's what she's doing. But she has every right to enjoy the benefits of American capitalism, and I think people have every right to criticize her for being hypocritical or a critic of the kind of system that she is now profiting from, or say there's something not genuine about her if that's her ideology and this is how she lives. But I hope everyone in America becomes as wealthy from wineries and venture capital firms and whatever floats their boat.
So here's the basic, simple part of this. There's no suggestion or allegation that Omar, or for that matter her husband, are involved in anything corrupt or underhand or inappropriate. This is about the husband, Minette's companies, greatly increasing in value. She is listing the value of her husband's assets as she should. If you look at the disclosure, it has SP, the code for spouse, beside the two, the venture capital firm and the winery. There is nothing wrong here. Now, the issue
of it's a right-wing disinformation campaign to say she's a millionaire. That would be.
Well, but is she a millionaire? I mean, for example, we say, like, Fortune says that Donald Trump is worth $5 billion. Do we say Melania Trump is worth $5 billion? I mean, we don't generally say that, right?
If she said the media is saying I'm worth $5 billion and that's a lie, that's a disinformation campaign, I think we'd say, okay, you're maybe she can't spend all of his money exactly. Right. Maybe there's some nuance there, but I don't know that we'd reject it with the strenuousness that stridentness that she was saying there.
Yeah, I mean, her husband's wealth isn't really her wealth, though. I mean, there is some grey area. I'll grant you that. But I think that the kind of sensation about
really
this.
Not the case?
Well, exactly.
There
could be a prenup that it's not the case, So who knows? But I think it's a slightly overdone, fake scam.
But there's definitely a prenup in the Melania case because they were married previously and they were wealthy when they became married. Since they were not wealthy or didn't have this level of wealth before the marriage, it'd be less likely that there's a prenup.
Omar and Minette were each both married previously as well. So anyway.
Well, that does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can get your podcast fix. See you back here tomorrow.